Okay, so today I'm just going to run you through how to make a nice, simple, plain envelope border with. So it's just going to be rounds, basically rounds of back loop double crochets. So it'll be quite nice and dense, nice and easy to do, and it looks nice and neat, and it'll finish off your blanket. Okay, so I'm just going to, for the purpose of this, I'm just using my little swatch that I made for the gauge swatch, and to show you how you can repeat the pattern if you want to. So before we start, what I like to do is to make completely sure that these ends are as secure as they possibly can be. Now, with an acrylic yarn like this special Stockcraft Special DK, I don't think they'd probably come undone anyway, but sometimes you may have a sort of a more slippery yarn and the knots don't necessarily stay tight, so adding an extra knot there is certainly a very good idea. But belt and braces I always prefer to make completely certain. So what I'll do then is I tend to take 3 of the ends at a time, sort of 2s or 3s is fine, and then just basically tie another knot. Now what you don't want to do is pull this knot too close to the edge of your project, because if you do, you'll sort of scrunch it up and make it harder to actually get your pick up your stitches. So I generally tighten it up so it's not too close like that. Okay, so it's a case of doing the same with all of the ends. So just tie a little knot. Ooh. Okay, get all the ends. This is where it's a good idea to actually not leave your ends too short, because I was just doing a gauge swatch here. I probably left my ends a little shorter than I normally would, so that just makes it slightly more tricky to tie a knot. Okay, try again. Getting all 3 in there. There we go. Like that. So once you've basically got them all tied off like that, what I then do is chop them off. So you're looking at about an inch or so, sort of 3 centimeters long. Some people do prefer to do this tying off after they've done the border. Personally, I prefer to do it first, but if you want to do the border first and then tie it off before you, because we're going to be doing basically 2 borders, sandwiching the ends in between. So if you prefer, you can tie these off before we then join the 2 borders together. But I'm going to do all mine now, and then I'll come back and show you how we get started. Okay, so my ends are all nice and tidy now. What I would, just one little note, on the a main blanket if I was making it, what I would usually do is do 1 additional row of the back loop double crochets along the top, to kind of balance out this at the bottom, and that'll just give you a little bit more sort of breathing space between the end of your pattern and the border. But as this is just a quick little swatch, I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, so if you were doing this around the blanket, I'd probably recommend you just do 1 more plain row there. Okay, so what you will notice, first of all, my hook. Now, if you watched the previous part, you'll see that although I've written the pattern to say to use a 4mm hook, I generally used a 3.75, so I use 3.75mm for mine. The reason being that I've noticed that my tension can be a little bit looser. Over the years, it's sort of got a little bit looser, probably because the more mosaic I've done. So I am now going to use a 3.25mm. Basically, use a slightly smaller hook for your border. That just helps to keep the border that little bit firmer and stop it being too wobbly. But if you've done envelope borders before, you will have experience of which sort of hook sizes work best for you, so you go with that. Okay, so I've got a slightly smaller hook, and I've also got some stitch markers. So I've got 4 of these little pale blue ones here, which I'm going to put into each corner chain. The reason being, we're only going to be working 1 chain in each corner, and you're going to be using that chain to work the next corner, and sometimes it can be quite difficult to see which one's a chain and which one's a stitch. So we're going to just pop a little marker in there, and then we'll know exactly where our corners are. And then there's 1 more marker here, which I've got in a contrasting colour, and I'm going to use that to mark the final slip stitch of each round. So we work around, we join at the end with a slip stitch, and by putting that marker in there, we'll know exactly which one is the slip stitch, because that can be slightly tricky to see again. Okay, so we're all ready to go now. So you can use whatever colour you like for the border. I'm going to use this darker shade so we get a nice contrast, and you'll hopefully be able to see easier where I'm doing my stitches. Okay, so as we are working in the round, I don't generally start with a slip knot on my hook, so I'm going to start with a standing double crochet, but rather than doing a full slip knot, I'm just going to twist that yarn round like so, okay, to get started, because we'll be joining up at the end. We'll sort of make sure we secure the ends. It just stops you getting that extra sort of knot, okay, which I find that annoying, but if you want to put a slip knot in, that's fine. So where we are going to start is, if you can see, so I've now got my swatch. This is the last row I did. If you can see, let me put my hook down. See in there where we've got this chain at the end, so there's our edge stitch, and right next to that we've got our loose chain. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be working into the front loops of these chains all the way down the edge. So we're going to start in this one at the very top. Okay, so starting with so this time we're not working our double crochets into the back loop, we're actually working into the front loop. Okay, so we're going to start in there with a standing double crochet. Like I say, this end will get secured later. Chain, double crochet, so all into that front loop there. Okay, and then as you can probably see there, it is quite difficult to see which one's the chain. Hopefully it's not too dark. So I am just going to pop that marker into the front loop of that chain, so we now know where our first corner chain is. Okay, then we turn it round and we're going to be working into the front loop of all these stitches down the side. So you should find you'll be working, I mean, if you've done an extra row at the top in the same colour, which is what I suggested, you'll have one more row in this colour, but after that you're just gonna pop your hook under that front loop and make your double crochet there. Okay, so that's how we're picking up our stitches on the front all the way down. Okay, you see, nice and neat, no need for a round of slip stitches. Okay, so I've now got down to the bottom, so I've gone all the way down the edge of my little swatch there, picking up those stitches, and we're now going to work into the front loop of our foundation chain. So if you now pull that up, if you can sort of see, just at this first end, it might look a little bit strange and it seems like you've almost got two chains to work into. But if you look carefully, you can see this one here is the one on the edge, so it's this chain we need to work into. Okay, so make sure, hopefully you can see that. Yeah, so you've got one chain there, which is our edge stitch. So we're now going to work our corner in there. Okay, so double crochet, chain, double crochet, and then as before we're going to pop that marker just into the front loop of that corner chain. Okay, and then along the bottom edge we are going to just be working our double crochets into this front loop here. Okay, so this is why we worked into the back bump of our foundation chain, because we need to use the stitches here on the front for this border, and then we've still got one loop left there which we can use when we do our back border. Okay, so this is short, I'll just get to the end. Okay, so I've now got to the chain at the other end of my foundation row, and again double crochet, chain, double crochet, whoops, into there, and marker in that corner chain. So turn around again, and now we're going to be working up the side edge. And this time, on this way, the stitches look slightly different on this side than they did on the other, because we're kind of working up rather than down. But hopefully you'll be able to see if we stretch that out. You see, we've got the chain loops here, so we've got our edge stitch and the chain next to it. So we're just going to be working into those front loops there. So again, I will carry on up this edge, and I'll see you when we get to the end of it again. So we're back up to the top. Right, so I'm now up to the top edge again. And again, just make sure you're working into the correct loops. Difficult to show you on here. You can see, so this is the front loop we want, okay? Goes directly up from where we are. So for the final time, corner, double crochet chain, double crochet, and I'm popping that marker in there. Okay, so now I'll just sort of quickly go along the front loops again on this top edge. So hopefully you'll now see, I'll just show you when I've done all of them, why I usually add an extra row. Hold on, just going into that front loop. One more to go. Right, so there we go. So if you can see, it just looks a little bit, for my liking, it looks a little bit too close to the sort of pattern. So if I'd add an extra row, it would look more like it does at the bottom. Okay, so now we've got to the end of the round, which is also obviously the beginning of the round. We need to slip stitch into our initial standing double crochet, trying to make it as clear as possible. Can you see there? So that is, so we go under both loops when we're doing our slip stitch, okay, not into the front loop or the back loop, but under both loops, slip stitch. Now don't pull that slip stitch too tight, because we're going to be working the last stitch of our next round into that. And to make sure we can find it easily, we're just going to pop our final marker into there. Okay, so now we've done our final slip stitch. We're going to do a chain there. So that's just a turning chain to get our hook up to the right level. Okay, it doesn't count as a stitch. And then we start again. This is where it's handy that we have marked our corner chain, because we're going to start straight away into the back loop. So we're now working in the back loops. So it's like a standard mosaic stitch. We're now going to be working one double crochet, one chain, one double crochet into the back loop of our corner chains. And then again, move that marker up. Okay, so again, we know where our corner chain is. And then it's nice and simple. We are just going to work a row of double crochets into the back loops all the way along this edge. And then when we get to the corner, so that marked corner chain, we'll again do double crochet chain, double crochet into the back loop of that chain, move your marker up. So that is basically what we do. So I'm going to carry on and complete this round. And then I will pick up a contrasting colour. So just in case you don't want to do your whole border in one colour, you want to change it, I'll show you how we change the colours as well. Okay, so I've now got all the way around my border, and I've just got to that final marked slip stitch at the end of the row there. So I am just going to work my last stitch of the round into there. Okay, and then I can take that marker out. And we're now going to slip stitch into our first sort of chain in that corner. So again, this is our turning chain, so we're going to ignore that. Going to work under both loops there of that first double, I think I said chain, I mean double crochet next to our marked corner chain. Okay, slip stitch and pop the marker back in there. Okay, so that's now 2 rounds of our border done. So if you want to carry on and just make it solidly the same colour, which is what I actually did on my sample blanket, you just do exactly the same as we did on round 2 for round 3, and you keep doing that until you've got to the size you want. If, however, you want to change colours, what we now do is, so after this, we're going to, if you want to use this again, leave it attached. If you don't, you can cut it off, but make sure you leave, I would say, at least sort of 4 inches, 10 centimetres, so you can tidy up the end at the end. You need to make sure it's secure, sort of knotted together or woven in. Okay, but I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to use that again. So I'm now going to pick up my contrast yarn. And again, making sure you leave enough of an end that you can tidy it up afterwards. all you do is just pull that through that loop. Okay, and then take the one that you've dropped, pull that tight. So that's disappeared. Can you see? Then what we'll do, whoops, we need to do our turning chain now in the new colour. And again, just make sure that's nice and secure there. Right, so that's now our turning chain, and we'll go back to working into the back loop of our marked corner chain. And just to secure things, I'm going to work over that end there, just to hold it in place now, just on that first stitch, until we then get, so it's all secure until we then get to actually sort of properly sort of knot it together or weave it in at the end. So that was the first double crochet, chain, double crochet, move a marker up, and then it's just the same as you did on round 2. So it's a case of double crochets all the way around into the back loops, and then in the corners double crochet, chain, double crochet again into the back loop of the corner chain. So you carry on with your border and do as many rounds as you want. I would suggest that to be able to reasonably comfortably tuck your ends in, you're going to need at least 4 rounds. Probably 5 or 6 would make it a little bit easier. But once you've done at least 4 rounds, come back and I will just show you how we finish off this end, this side, and get you started on the back. Okay, so I've now got to the end of my 4th round on my front border, and so for the purpose of a little swatch here, I think I'm going to leave it at that. You obviously do as many rounds as you want. So for the final time, I'm going to work into this last marked slip stitch, and then we can get rid of that marker for the front border. We're not going to need that anymore. We are going to be leaving all 4 of these corner markers in though, because when we come to join the borders together, front and back borders, we're going to need to know, still going to need to know where our corner chains are. But to finish, rather than, as we've been doing on the other rounds, working a slip stitch under there, for a neater edge, what I prefer to do, take my hook out of that, is an invisible join. So I'm going to chop that off there. You need to leave enough of an end because you're now going to be threading that onto a tapestry needle. There we go. And weaving and like completing the round off and weaving it in. So what I'm now going to do is pull that end through. So we now have, hopefully you can see that, lighting's not brilliant today, 1 loop, 1 strand of yarn coming out of the loops of our final stitch. Okay, so now just need to pop that onto a tapestry needle, and what we're going to do, we're not now going to insert our needle in there where we would have been putting our hook if we were doing a slip stitch. If we do that, we're going to create an extra loop. What we need to do is basically we're going to be creating a new loop, sort of like so, which will replace this one here. So to do that, we actually insert our needle right next to this corner chain. Okay, so we're putting our needle in like so, right next to our marked corner chain. Pull it through. Now make sure you don't pull this too tight, because the idea is, oops, sorry, I'm so close to the stand for my phone, I managed to knock it. Okay, so we're going to pull that through there. So not pulling it too tight, and then the idea is you insert your needle back into the same part of the stitch there where this yarn came out. So we put it through there, and then it'll naturally want to go down. There's like the 3rd loop at the back, so for extra security our needle goes through like so. Okay, then pull that through, and again, don't pull it too tight. You just want to leave it so it looks exactly the same as all of the other stitches. Okay, so when you've got that, you need to turn it over and make it secure. So we've got all of these ends here that we're going to need to make secure too. So what I'm going to do here with this, as we've got other ends to tie it to, we don't need to fully weave it in, we can still knot it together kind of like we've done here. So just bring your needle through, again making sure you don't pull any of this too tight because we don't want to bunch anything up. Okay, and take that off, and we can actually tie it together with this other yarn there. Okay, 2, and I'm going to make extra certain by doing that 3 times. Okay, and then we can chop that off, leaving enough there. It's all going to be tucked inside the border anyway. So we just now got to do the same with these two. On the front we've got that, and on the back we've got that. So you can see we've got all our ends here. So now what we need to do is basically repeat what we've done on the front, but do it on the back. Okay, so you can choose any corner you want, but again I'm going to go with this one here because on my written instructions I always start with picking up the stitches on the edge. So exactly the same as we did on the front, starting with a, oops, where are we? Standing double crochet. So what you need to do is find the corner. You can see there's our edge stitch again, so it's in there, and you should be able to see. It might be difficult for you to see it on mine because I rather stupidly picked quite a dark colour, but it's the same stitch where you can see the corner stitches were worked in on the front. Okay, so double crochet, chain, double crochet, and again I've got some more stitch markers here, so we're still going to be marking the corner chains. So what we will now do, because it's slightly harder to find just your chains on the back, 2 reasons I think. 1, they actually look different on the back, and 2, you have already obviously worked into them on the front. But again, you should be able to see we've got our edge stitch there, and so this loop here, okay, this chain, the horizontal bar there, that's where we're going to be working our stitches into. So what you can do is tuck all that out of the way. Okay, double crochet, so there we go, under that bar I've got double crochets in there. So just like you did on the front, carry on, whoops, down like so. When you get to the end, double crochet, chain, double crochet in that sort of first chain on the bottom edge, and then work across your double crochets into the front loop of the, so it's the last stitch remaining on the bottom edge. So if you find your hook catches in there like mine just did, just hold it down, there we go, tug them out of the way with your finger. Right, so I've now got down to the bottom edge, and again you can see we've got our edge stitch, and then the next one, hopefully you can see, that's where all of those, see there, where all of those stitches are made at the bottom. So we're going to work off corner there, like so, double crochet, chain, double crochet, and don't forget to mark the corner. So now we're going to just go along this bottom edge, working our double crochets in there. And what I will just do, we will just go up the next edge together, because again that looks slightly different. So just to show you, in case you're struggling to find where to put your hook, where to work your stitches. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as it's close to the edge and they're all in the same place, it's a nice even straight line, it probably doesn't matter if you pick a slightly different loop. But, okay, so we've now got up to the next corner again. So it is, we'll do the corner in there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, marking that. Right, now so when we now come to this next edge, see, it's still, we're still looking at this kind of horizontal bar there. So if you want to sort of try and stretch it out, hopefully that helps a bit. You see, you've got your edge stitch, and then it's this bit here. That's where we're going to be working our stitches into. Okay. So that part of the stitch there. So if you carry on like so, you can now finish this round. And actually you can probably now finish this back border because the rest of it is going to be exactly the same as we did on the front. So when your back border is the same as your front border, number of rounds wise, come back to me and we'll just join the two together. Okay, so I've now done my 4 rounds on the back border as well. So that's what that looks like. So now we just need to basically join these together so we can cover up those ends. So we'll just turn it back over to the right side. The colour you use to join them is entirely up to you. Like I say, on the actual pattern that this goes with, I did everything just in the darker colour. But what I am going to do is pick up our contrast again for the joining round, just to make it easier for you to see the stitches. Entirely up to you what colour you use. But how we now join them together is you can basically start in any corner you like. And as before, we are going to start with a standing double crochet. And as before, because we're joining it in the round, I'm personally not going to put a knot on it. So the reason for leaving these corner markers in is that's where we're going to be starting. So what we need to do now is basically work into the back loop of our corner chain on the front, and it's like the front loop as you're looking at it, but the back loop as you would have worked it. Hopefully that makes sense there. Can you see where, try to show you where that marker goes in there? So we're going into the back loop of that stitch as well. Okay, we'll get all the strands. Okay, and we're working both of those together. Now you can either carry on with your 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet in the corner on here, but for me, when it's the final round, I do like to just do 3 double crochets. Doesn't matter, but make sure they're all done through both of those loops. Okay, and then all we do is we've got to go all the way around, picking up the back loops as they were worked. So trying to show you without getting my fingers in the way. Hopefully you can see there, like so, to join them both together with a double crochet. Okay, like so. And then if you've done it right and you haven't missed or added any stitches anywhere, you should find you get to the next corner at the same time for both borders. So I will just hope that is the case. I'll just show you, see, that's how it's now going to look on the front. So we're carrying on working into our back loops. Okay, so I've just come back on this side where we've got our loose ends, just to show you that because we only did 4 rounds, the ends are still poking out a little bit. Don't trim them off. All you need to do is just basically like that, just tuck them in before you join it up. Okay, so obviously the more rounds you do, the less fiddly it will be trying to sort of push your ends in. Okay, so I'm now almost to the end, just got one more stitch to do before I get to that last corner, like so. And now we're gonna finish off like we did when we did the front and back with an invisible join, just to make it neater. So I just should go through that again. So take my hook out, whoops, chop that off and pull the end through. Okay, so just like we did before. So the only difference is now we've done both sides together is that we're going to have to be a little bit more careful how we weave in on the back. Okay, because it's all nice and neat on the back as well. So as before, you ignore this first loop here, and we're going to insert our insert the needle under there, because we're now replacing that first loop back into the middle of the stitch and down through that extra loop, and then don't pull it too tight, just leave it like so, so it looks just like all the other stitches. And then, like I said, what you can now do is actually pull this one as tight as you like to get that out of the way, So to make it neat, I'm just going to kind of finish off the stitch, if you see what I mean by, I'm going to insert my needle in there and just run that way under a few stitches. And then make sure you don't pull that too tight. There, okay. So then it is just a case now of being careful to weave it in as neat as you can. So go back that way. And then when you want to go in the other direction, make sure you either go over the loop, the sort of stitch that you've just come out of there, or under the next one. If you go straight back the same way, you could well just undo the bit you just done. Okay, so back like that. And then when you cut it off, just pull it slightly tighter. There we go, that end will then disappear in there, and then we just need to do the same with this one, which I'll probably do down this way. And then your envelope border is done.